Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Life happens. While we can't always choose what does happen in our lives, we can decide how to react to it. Is there a way to consciously respond to life rather than live from knee-jerk reactions and old patterns? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to consider the power of choice and practical spirituality is Selina Maitreya. Selina is a lecturer and teacher of practical spirituality. She's the author of Raise Your Frequency, Transform Your Life, How to Respond with Love to Life's Difficulties. Her website, practicalspiritualitywithselina.com. Selina, thank you so much for joining us on Mission Evolution.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So your training, what training have you had in spirituality?
Oh my goodness. I was first given my name and met my first teacher when I was 16 years old, and I've just turned 69. So I've been living my life through the practices and values of spirituality for I don't know how many years, whatever number that is, of 40 or 50 years. So my training has been in the practical experience of living spiritual values.
So who was your teacher and what form did you study?
Yeah, the first teacher I had was a woman named Maitreya who believed in oneness, the concept that we are all different physical beings, different physical brains, personalities and histories. We have different emotional experiences. We have different experiences in the third dimensional world. But the one common denominator we all have is the energy of love, the energy of oneness. That was my first teacher. And my second teacher, the Reverend Janice Hope Gorman, who runs the Hope Interfaith Center in Mankato, Minnesota, has been my teacher for 27 years. And once again, I learned there the embodiment of the energies and the practices of spiritual living. And it's the embodiment of learning how to be in the energies of patience and kindness and compassion that I live every day. And so that's, I've studied with many other teachers, I've gone to workshops, I've read books, but the work of actually embodying the values is my daily practice.
Now, is there a particular study like Buddhism
Nope.
or
Nope.
no?
Nope. The study is oneness. The study is, Buddhism, catechism, Judaism, religions are really different interpretations of the very values that I practice, but they're interpretations through three-dimensional form, through humanity. Oneness kind of supersedes that. So there's not one religion, there's one practice, and it's love. And it's that simple that when we move in the energy of love, but truly learn how to be that energy, not just give it lip service or come and go through the practices that really changes and enables us to embody them. So it's really the energy of oneness that's my focus.
So it's a bit of a new age sort of thing in that it's not coming from the ancient practices.
It's not new age. It is a new, you can call it new age, we can call it ancient practices because oneness, love, transcends all time. So it's the energy of love that spurred the practice of Buddhism, the practice of catechism. It's the energy of love, excuse me, that inspired the New Age movement. Those are all movements that all come down to the energy of love. Even the Dalai Lama says, "My religion is love." It's that simple. So I would focus it there. Yeah.
Let's define love. I
Mm.
mean, it's a word that's used a lot, but what is it exactly?
I love that question. So love that question. Thank you. I would answer it this way. When I look at myself or you, Gwilda, we often are trained when we're born to refer to ourselves as me or I, which is a one-dimensional being, but we're actually multidimensional beings. So I have the physicality of my body, the physicality of my brain, but within this life stream, I also have a history in this life. I have a personality, and then I have energy fields. I have my high frequency of love. So for me, love is an energy field called the intuitive body, the soul level. We also have our low frequency of pain and fear. We have our emotional body, our thinking mind. For me, love is an energy field that came into my body and gave me life. Love is for me the divine within. That's how I would define love.
You speak of high frequency and low frequency.
Mm.
How can we tell which is which?
Oh, so easy because you see, we have emotional bodies and thinking minds. And once again, come into this third dimensional world when we're born as energy and form, and we're trained to think that we are our thoughts or we are our emotional body. But actually, what we are is the energy of love. So when we're going through our day, Gwilda, and we feel frustrated, we feel impatient, we feel um, intolerant, we feel unkind, we're irritated. Those are symptoms. Those are alerts in my world that we are in low frequency. So anytime we have an emotional charge that's negative or a thought that is negative, we're in low frequency. When we're open and expansive, when we're feeling loving and kind, when we're compassionate and tolerant, then we're in high frequency.
When we're going through it, basically,
Yeah.
feeling judgmental, feeling a
Mhm.
lot of angst, feeling angry, feeling isolated. Is it we just have to and join love again, or is there a process that we need to go through to clear ourselves in order to bring our frequency back to that of love?
Yeah, most people, as much as they would love to be able to snap their fingers and go from low frequency to high, we're not able to unless we have some real conscious efforts put into place. So the first thing that has to happen is to be aware, to know where we are in the process. And most people walk through their life just being in a process and not aware of it. And in the world of source, the world that I float, we call that having, witnessing as we be. So the first step is to really be able to be trained or train yourself if possible to witness how you are as you go along and not just be in this situation. So that's the first step. The second is once you recognize through this witnessing process that you're in low frequency, the practices that are suggested in the book are to ha- go to the higher source of who you are, however you choose to do that, whether you close your eyes. There's a practice called the breath of life, which is a very beautiful practice where we just close our eyes and breathe in and out through the nose, which signals the parasympathetic nervous system physically to calm down, but internally opens you to the divine within. And as you're breathing in and out through the nose, slowly, deeply, and consciously, the entire system is slowing down. That kind of takes you, Gwilda, from the third dimensional world into the inner sanctum. And when you feel that you're in a space where you are really neutral, then the next step is to ask the divine within, what am I to learn here? Because every bit of difficulty, Spirit has told me over and over again that difficulty is our doorway to love when we choose to respond to it from the higher frequencies. So there's something there that we still need to learn in our third dimensional life. So the first thing we want to do is to check in with that and to ask, what am I to learn from this moment of difficulty? And allow that to land. And then once you receive it, then you ask, what frequency of love am I being called to fill my life stream with? And whether it's patience or kindness. And let's just say it's patience. And when you're delivered patience, then you remember a time when you were patient or someone was patient with you and you needed that. And you see it clearly in all detail and you feel it deeply in the heart. And then you come out of that. And when you
Oh,
come out of that, you notice your change and you're in high frequency because we live in the third dimensional world, Gwilda, and we can't go upstairs and down at the same time. So we can't be in low frequency and high.
we're about out of time in this segment, but it's there's a fine line between raising your frequency and
Mhm,
going into denial,
mhm,
skipping over the process.
mhm.
How can you tell which one you're doing?
Well, if you take these steps, you're not in denial. If you're in awareness, you can't be in denial. If you're in awareness of your state, which is the first step, you can never be in denial because if you're in your awareness, you're aware of what's happening. That, and I couldn't agree with you more. We never want to be in denial.
Well, it happens a lot, you know. Yeah. So, again, we're just about out of time, but what's the first sign for a person that they're in denial?
Things start to happen in your life where you're out of alignment. You know, things aren't going well for you, things aren't happening. Your physical body might be showing you symptoms of something happening within you. So I would look to your physicality. That's where it shows up first.
Well, it is that wonderful moment when we do get to take a station break. Selena and I will return very shortly, so please don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. What good does spirituality do us if we can't bring it to the street? This hour, discussing the practical aspects of spirituality, is Selina Maitreya. Selena is the author of Raise Your Frequency, Transform Your Life: How to Respond with Love to Life's Difficulties. So, Selena, that's the question of the hour. How do we bring this to the street?
I love that phrase, bringing it to the street. Bringing it to the street to me, Gwilda, really refers to each one of us accepting responsibility for our own consciousness and for the way that we walk in the world. You know, it's been said many times because it's very accurate that each person's energy contributes to the collective. And so it's so important. Very often, students say to me, I'm very concerned about the state of the world today. What can I do to shift that? And the first thing I always say is, well, what are you doing in your own life? Where is your consciousness? How are you walking through the world? And if everyone took responsibility for how they walked in the world and chose to respond to difficulty from love. I mean, just if we just took a moment and thought about what that would be like if people were aware and conscious and were responding to difficulties, not with more of the same, because we're kind of conditioned to respond to difficulty with more of the same. Somebody cuts someone off on the road, and it's very rare that they bless them and send them on their way. They normally will get angry because they're shook or they're fearful, right? They were in a moment of fear. So as we move forward, accepting responsibility to learn how to respond to difficulty from love, because certainly we do well in the good moments.
So, what does responding from love look like? It's like, those are great words, but what does it
Yes.
look like? What does it feel like?
I'm so glad you asked because it's not an easy process. And this isn't like we should all be thinking of rainbows and unicorns. This is very practical. What it looks like is this is that as you're in the car and you're having you're spacing out or you're just peaceful, and then suddenly somebody comes in and slams in front of you, and you have to slam on your brakes and you go to fear. That's when we use that moment as an alert and you remind yourself, oh my gosh, here's my opportunity to invoke the high frequency of love who I am. And so you take the moment to breathe and you literally breathe into that moment. Slow, deep, the breath of life I mentioned a few moments ago. So you're sitting in your car, you can very easily take deep, long, slow breaths and bring yourself back to neutrality. So it's recognizing we're out of alignment with love. It's breathing into it, or if we're in another place and we're not driving, we can go through the steps we talked about a few minutes ago. We're actually able to transform the frequency we're experiencing in the moment. So that's what responding from love is it's recognizing you're out of alignment. It's taking breaths to bring yourself back to neutrality. And then maybe you bless when you're back to neutrality, you bless the driver and you say, hey, slow down, be well, get to your destination safely. That's that's a practice.
Is from what you're saying,
Mhm,
when we go into fear, we go into the back brain, and we don't have very
mhm,
many resources there: fight,
mhm.
flight, or freeze, right? So, are you using breath to come back out of the back brain and go back into the front brain where we do have access to
Yeah.
love and spirituality?
Well you see, I don't refer to it as a brain because I'm working with the frequencies within me, and here's what's so interesting. Neuroscience has said the brain does not create anew. What the brain does is recognize that which it knows and creates structure around it. So what the brain is recognizing is frequency, EKGs, EEGs. The brain is full of frequency. If we are in a low frequency of fear, the brain starts to create structure, fearful thoughts. We have worries, we have anxiety. If we're in high frequency, the brain is feeded and fed, rather feeded, that's not a word, it's fed by the high frequency that we are. And suddenly thoughts and feelings of openness and kindness are there. So we're not working with trying to change the thoughts, the product the brain creates. We're changing the frequency that feeds the brain, which means we're starting at the beginning of the process. So I teach people how to recognize and develop a relationship with the intuitive body, their highest frequency. So once that relationship is developed, which is very real and very present once it's there, then it can be accessed whenever we're in fear. And when it's accessed, then the brain is fed with that energy. So we're giving the energy a different frequency to structure around.
Where is this higher frequency coming from?
It's God, it's the divine, it's love, it's given to we are that. That is our natural inheritance. That is what every person has in common. It's what we call oneness. And that's what's so beautiful about this, Gwilda, is it doesn't cost us anything except our willingness to learn how to engage that. It's kind of like a muscle in my arm. We have muscles in our arms that are there. When we choose to develop them, um, then we can see them, then they're visible, but they're always there. And so our intuitive body is in everyone. And when we choose to develop it, it becomes very present.
It sounds like you say, this is a practice, and the time to start it is not when somebody slams in front of you on the highway, but rather to have it already developed.
Well, that would be optimum. That would be lovely. However, people come to this work usually, I find, when they're in a situation in life that's very difficult and tenuous for them. If people came here during times of openness and wonder, that would be great because then they're already in a state and we develop from there. But people tend to, because of the way life is, because we're humans, we're energy and form, and we're conditioned to not know about our intuitive body. Most people don't, and most people haven't developed it. So it takes a lot for some people to come to this type of work.
As I understand it, we come from source, right?
Mhm.
So that means we come in pretty high frequency. What happens?
Well, it's my understanding, and what sources delivered to me is that when we come into bodies, we are nothing but the energy of love. Our personality hasn't developed at that point. We haven't had experiences in life that involve fear, so we're not driven by fear as we are later in life if we don't become conscious. And so we are nothing but love. So, Gwilda, when a baby comes into a restaurant, like a little infant, somebody wheels a little infant in. I've never been in that situation where, that's happened. And not every person in that restaurant isn't kind of craning their heads to connect to that little baby's energy. And while they may not know it, what they're looking to connect to, this little bit of wonder, is high frequency energy. There's something in them that wants to connect to that because there's something in them that has a memory that that's who they are, whether they're conscious in this world or not of that. And so that baby comes in and everybody wants to connect to that energy. As we go through life, as we're raised by our parents and by society, we're raised to be really focused on our thinking mind. I remember my mom, who's a wonderful person, saying to me when I was younger, "What are you thinking?" Right? And those 4 words, carry a frequency. So what are you thinking? We're trained to focus on our brain. We're trained to feel our emotions. And so our emotional body and our thinking mind become prominent. Our intuitive body is rarely mentioned unless we're religious and we go to temple or we go to church. That's the only time it's usually brought into our lives. And and as we move forward, um, when we come to teenage years, that's the first time a lot of people start to question. I know I came to spirituality at 14. And I had things happening in my life that made me question. Another pivotal time for people is somewhere between their 40s, on the 40s on, when they've got everything in life, but they're still not happy and they're wondering why. So there are different parts in our life where we get to come and question and realize that there's a whole aspect of our being that we haven't even tapped into, and that aspect is our intuitive body.
You spoke of source delivering something to you. How does that
Mhm.
happen, and how can you tell it's from source? How does it come through?
Yeah, really good questions. The source first started channeling through me about 20 years ago. It was the third visit with my teacher. I was sitting in her home in Mankato, Minnesota, farm country south of the cities in Minnesota, south of Minneapolis. And literally, a voice came speaking through me in words that I don't use, in a tonality that isn't mine, and were and words that were so much wiser than I could ever manage. And I was literally freaked out. And luckily, I was sitting with a woman who had channeled for years, and she explained to me what was happening, that there was an opening within me, and that the divine energy was speaking through me. And then I worked with her for years to learn how to cultivate that and how to live an integral life so that I could continue to be a channel for Source. Source speaks through me all the time for my students. I feel as if my life is connected to Source 24/7. When I had my car event in 2013, Source came into the car during the time I was unconscious and told me what was about to happen and what would happen in the next several years ahead. And so I'm in continual conversation with Source. And I know that it's not me because I know what it feels like to think, and I know what it feels like to receive the divine. And it's a very different experience. And the words of the divine, as I said, are much wiser than I could ever be.
So we are just about out of time in this segment as well. But how do there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And on the
Mhm.
other side of the break, I'd really like to get into how do we tell what's coming through us? How do we know it's from source or from something
Ego.
not so sourcey? Yes. So Selena and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Is wisdom something we learn or something we access? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing wisdom and consciousness is Selina Maitreya. Her website, practicalspiritualitywithselina.com. Selena, we were just getting into accessing source, bringing through wisdom that may or may not be our own. And my question was, how can you be sure that what you're bringing through is coming from source, if you will? And you mentioned ego just before we went out, but
Mhm.
aren't there other things out there outside of our personal ego that can try to give us information that may or may not be useful?
Well, my experience is that the egoic, which is the low frequency, it's the pain body, um, is so rooted in most of us as a directional compass that is the primary source that most people are being moved by, which is fear. Um, when we bring in the energy of love, when we respond from the energy of love, we are responding from that higher divine. I'm wondering what you're thinking about as other aspects that I might not be considering, Gwilda.
Well, just a simple one is we're sitting watching TV and
Mhm.
somebody's throwing in advertising, and there's some kind of subliminal messages going on there. That's just one example of
Mhm.
information coming through that may or may not be in our best interest.
Right. So I see what you're saying. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. So when that message comes through, we have a choice as to how we respond to that. And what happens within this form of divinity in physical form is we normally will come from one of two places. Our responses are always from the two energetic fields of which we are to that, which is I'm either going to accept this from love or I'm going to respond to this from fear. And those are generally the two frequencies that we can respond to any incoming information. And I think that your question also really speaks to the choice we always have in life to respond from fear or love to anything that happens. So anything that comes at us, we still have the choice as to our response. And our response comes from either fear or love.
You mentioned the pain body. What's that
Mm.
exactly?
That's the egoic body, that low frequency energy. When we have experiences, whether it's emotional, physical, or spiritual pain, physical or spiritual pain, it's experienced. Whenever we have intellectual, physical pain, we're thinking, we're feeling, um, that is stored in the body, and there's a lot of science to this, a lot of writing about that. So the low frequency pain is what we call the egoic field. It's the pain body. Eckhart Tolle writes about it. Buddhism speaks of it. Many traditions speak of the ego as being an area of pain. Now, we never want to get rid of the ego. The ego has purpose. I love the beautiful truth that Spirit gave me a while back, that we've heard everything that can help can heal, and everything that can heal can harm. So there are times the ego is important. What we do in the work here is we learn how to respond to difficulty not from the pain, but from the higher frequency of love. Because our next moment of creation, Gwilda, regardless of whatever lands in our world, our next moment is created from our last energetic moment of experience. So if we create our next moment from pain, that's what we get. If pain comes to us, if difficulty happens, and we're alert and we're aware, and we say, got to transform this moment before I go on to the next thing I'm about to do, then we're creating our next moments from a higher frequency. So that's
How,
the work here.
how does one transform the moment? How do you do that?
What we were talking about earlier in the program, we can go with there's lots of different ways. We can use the breath of life to take that moment of fear, go to neutral, bring it down to neutrality and stay there. We can use the breath of life to transform the moment of fear to neutrality, go to our highest knowing once we have a relationship with the divine within, and ask, what am I to learn? What high frequency energy am I meant to transform into? Transform into that through the steps that we spoke of. And then we move on in the next moment. And it sounds as if, every practice we do, whether it's building our muscles, our arm muscles, if I were to describe to somebody what to do to build an arm muscle, you bio free weight, you pick up the weight. These are the steps that you do with the weight. You put it down, you pick it up every 3 days for the next whatever. The instructions sound cumbersome, but the doing of it is not. So we have different practices that we can take to transform the energy and then move on. Over time, it's like breath. I transform every single moment of every single day because I'm still, after all these years, I still have moments of judgment. I still have moments of irritation. The difference is as soon as I see them, I'm transforming them through breath and through the practices that from two of the many practices that we can learn to use that we discussed earlier.
Let's go into frequency a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, Reality is built out of frequency. Am I correct so far?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that would indicate to me that every frequency has its purpose in the larger scheme of things. And yet
Absolutely.
here we are judging high frequency from low frequency. Straighten that out for me a little bit, would you please?
Sure. I absolutely love where we're going with this because once again, everything that can hurt can heal, everything that can heal can harm. There's no good or bad to this. Low frequency doesn't serve us if we stay inside of it. If we have an event that isn't pleasant and we use it as a landing pad, that doesn't serve us because we're grounded in that. High frequency is the energy of love. There's nothing about that that doesn't serve us. So staying in high frequency is a beautiful way to lead a life. So, but low frequency has its purpose. There's so much for us to learn, to gain. And that's why, in the practice of having an event that's difficult and just moving forward, as you said, you're kind of denying it. But when we're recognizing it, we're acknowledging it, we're not stuffing the emotion or the thought at all. We're acknowledging it, but we're choosing to transform or transmute it into a higher frequency. That's golden. So we need, this life of third dimensional reality contains both frequencies, and we want to utilize them to help us to elevate.
So the lower frequencies
Mhm.
are teachers. Is that what you're saying to me?
Absolutely. I love that. They are teachers. They're opportunities for us to see where we're still out of alignment with the energy of love. In this work, we learn to move from being mind, intellectually, and emotionally and fear based driven to being intuitively guided. When we're grounded in our high frequency in love and kindness and patience and compassion and tolerance, being our GPS 24/7, then the emotional body becomes an alert system to let us know we're out of alignment with love. The intellectual's body becomes the process we use to move through back to love. And fear takes a side step and alerts us when we're about to take our foot off the sidewalk in a busy metropolitan area and we haven't looked left to right. So in this work, the emotional body and intellectual body move back into where they're helpers and not directors because the intuitive body is the directional compass.
You speak of obtaining abundance.
Mm,
Everybody wants abundance.
mhm.
So, how does one obtain abundance?
Well, I think it depends on what abundance looks like for people. I think that's something that I would really urge the listeners here to redefine for yourself. What does an abundant life actually look like to you? Um, Once we are able to understand how to utilize the energetic frequencies within our system, and we're able to see difficulty through the definition of a learning tool that enables us to become aware so that we know when to shift into peace and when we're in higher frequencies and we're grounded in that as a way of life, then we have a foundation to be able to build abundance. Because if we're back and forth between being in fear and having occasional moments of joy or being in fear a lot and having occasional moments of peace, there's very little foundation for abundance, which is the highest frequency of love to grow. And not only to grow, but we can create abundant opportunities, but if you don't have a foundation energetically within you to hold that, then those moments are going to come and go without them being a continual pattern. So we
Is it?
need to be neutral first. We need to have our daily life be one of neutrality. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Is it a matter of recognition then?
That's the first step, awareness. Awareness is that first step of where you are because you can't change your state unless you know you're there. And most people aren't really committed to understanding that they need to go through the process of being able to witness as they be. So when you're able, when you really want this and you're really wanting to do the work of becoming aware, that's our first step. Yeah.
But abundance seems to be so subjective. I mean, even within ourselves, I can be in a situation, and if I'm not coming from a place of gratitude, I don't recognize any of the abundance around me.
Yeah.
How does gratitude play in here then?
Gratitude is huge. It is one of our quickest tools for transformation because it's a field. It's an all of these are energy fields. The Kabbalists talk about the 72 names of God, the 72 frequencies that represent the God state. And so there are so many manifestations of that, of which gratitude is one of them. And so one of the quickest ways to transform a state, here's yet another. We spoke of the breath. We
Well, but
spoke of
I'm sorry, we're going to have to go into transformation on the other side of yet
okay.
another station break. Please stay with us as Selena and I continue to explore bringing spirituality into daily life. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. If we aren't grateful for a thing, do we lose it? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Selina Maitreya. Her website is practicalspiritualitywithselina.com. So again, let's continue with what we were discussing before we came into the break, which is where does gratitude fit in here?
Yeah. So gratitude is one of the highest frequencies of love. And that's what I was expressing with the 72 names of God. And it is yet another practice. Active gratitude is a practice we can take when we're in those low frequencies. So it is a frequency, it's a very high frequency. And what I would suggest our listeners take on is when you're in a moment where you recognize, you're aware that you're in low frequency, take a moment and sit down and close your eyes and go into your memory, which is high frequency of a time when you were in gratitude. Someone has done something wonderful for you. You did something wonderful for someone else. And really feel that moment, seeing it all in your third eye completely, all the descriptions, all of the details, and then feeling it, then direct your energy down toward your heart center and feel it in your heart and do that over with 3 or 4 different experiences and come out of it and see where you are because you can't not be in neutrality and peace. So that once again is another tool, our breath and gratitude, Gwilda, that cost us nothing but our willingness to engage. And if these seem simple to people, I would say fabulous. Try them out because they're very, very powerful tools that really shift our state.
So is gratitude a great transmuter then?
It is. It's a fabulous transmuter. It is a very powerful energy that's very it's powerful because it's available to us. You know, when we're in form, there are things that aren't available to us. But gratitude is an experience that we have in the third dimensional world. So it's something that's easily accessible to most people.
It kind of can it reframe our perceptions?
Well, it our perceptions are energy, so energy can reframe energy. And so if we're in a low frequency state, we go into gratitude. It's definitely our energy is definitely then reframed through the state of gratitude. What happens, once again, living in third dimensional reality, we can't be sick and well at the same time. So let's equate sickness with, just for a moment, with low frequency. So if you're in low frequency and you want to transmute it, then you go into a higher frequency state because you can't be in a low frequency at the same time you're in high frequency. Just like you can't go upstairs and down at the same time. Can't be sick and well at the same time. So whenever we transmute into high frequency, our energy has always shifted.
Does gratitude give us an opportunity to recognize things in our environment that we can then use in a positive way versus feeling victim?
Yes, because when you're in a higher frequency state, it's open. You see possibilities. When we're in a low frequency state, we don't see possibilities. We only see what has created that low frequency. It's very limiting, it's very closed. So, transmuting into a higher state shows us all the possibilities, or not all, but it gives us a greater awareness of the possibilities we have. And not just around that particular thing that might have created the difficulty, but around, we're in a higher frequency, so we feel connected to so many possibilities and so many things in the world.
Being on the planet, being in the third dimension, is a particular frequency bandwidth. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
Being on the planet, being in physical form,
Mhm,
encompasses a particular bandwidth of frequency. If we are busy being high frequency,
mhm.
are we able to ground it to be present in physical reality?
We're able to, high frequency is our nature. High frequency already grounded. It is our nature. When we choose to access it, we don't have to ground it because it's already there. That is what came into our bodies and breathed out. Spirit has shared with me that the breath is the physical manifestation of the soul. It's the first thing that comes into our body, and it is that last piece that leaves our body. So it's the breath that already grounds us. And so high frequency is grounded into our body. It's nothing we have to rework to ground.
Selena, it's about that time in the show, and I get to ask you, what's your mission?
Thank you for that. My mission is to take the work that's in the book that I have been given by Source to share with people, which is the fact that difficulty is meant to be a doorway to love. And my mission is to get out on the road, to reach as many people as I can through workshops, through books, through interviews like this, to share with them and introduce to them their intuitive body, and to let them know that this is a whole tool bag of possibilities of high frequency energy that is here to guide you through your life for your highest knowing and your highest good.
Is frequency something one attunes to? It seems like we've been talking this whole hour about
Mhm.
basically tools for attunement. If that's the case, there's a lot of low frequency in the world. How can we recognize when we're being attuned to the common denominator versus our higher frequency?
Yeah, the energetic, the emotional body and the thinking mind are our clearest tools to knowing, our indicators, our alert system to let us know that we're attuning to the collective consciousness rather than to our highest knowing. So whenever we're in any type of fear or discomfort, we're in low frequency. And that's the time to attune for sure to a higher frequency modality.
Does exposure help with that? I mean, exposing yourself to people that are also trying to be conscious and tuned to a higher frequency?
Sure, reading high frequency material, listening to music, all of that is helpful, but nothing will really move us forward unless we take on the responsibility of doing the work to notice when we're not in high frequency and to choose to shift it. So, when people come to Source and Spirit, they're very intrigued by gems and minerals and angels, and all of that knowledge is very helpful. But really, when we get to a place where we're taking on the work of becoming aware of our own state and shifting our frequency into higher frequency, that's when we're really truly able to see the experiences show up in our own life because that's our job.
No shortcuts.
No, there really aren't any shortcuts, and I'm very clear on that. It's not a short-term process, it's a longer-term process to learn and to do, and it's a lifestyle. This is a new lifestyle to live in conscious awareness and to choose to shift our frequencies when we're not. What people don't know, Gwilda, is there's actual processes, which is what I want to lay out for people and share with them.
Why has this information gotten lost over the years? I mean, you mentioned the ancient forums carried it, and yet it seems to have gotten lost. What happened?
I have no idea. I have no idea where it got lost or why it got lost. There is a beautiful story called The Fall from Grace, where there were battles between light and dark, and light lost the battle and lost its ability to know who it was. That is a story that Spirit told me years ago. And in that moment, we had to continually remember who we are. And that's why I believe this work is so important because each time difficulty happens, we have the opportunity to choose love as our response. And in choosing that in the three-dimensional form of physical world, we become that. So each time there's a moment of difficulty, if we take that moment to transmute it, we become the light that we truly are.
As more and more, and I speak as if it's going to happen because that's my sincere hope, as more and more of us
Mhm.
do the practice and catch ourselves and become more conscious and choose to transmute our
Mhm.
situation through gratitude and through
Mhm.
love. What do you see changing on the planet?
Oh, everything. Absolutely everything. And I can tell you that so profoundly because I've seen the change in my life with this work. I have many, many students I've worked with for the last 20 years. And in the last 3 years of taking people through the work in the book, I took people, my students and other people through work study groups where we took each chapter and worked the practices because the book is filled with practices. So as they use the practices, they change their lives because we are energetic beings and energy shifts and changes and grows. So the changes in them are, they will tell you are wonderful and their lives are so much more deep and integral. So imagine that extrapolated through the world. If everyone became aware, Gwilda, of their emotions and their actions and they chose to change them to love, how could that not be wonderful? And I share that wish with you as well.
As we move and evolve into a higher frequency way of expressing on the planet, what do you think is going to be the first signs that there's enough people doing it to make a radical change?
Well, in 2012, when everyone was talking about the shifts in 2012, if you remember that, there was a lot of buzz going around because of the Mayan calendar and the predictions. I sat with the Mayans in New York City, and it was remarkable. Only 12 people in the audience with these amazing 7 elders who came to New York City to share. And what they said was that what the Mayan calendar was speaking of and recognizing was the fact that in 2012 there would be more people of consciousness on this planet than ever before.
Hmm.
And so I
Unfortunately, we are out of
okay,
time.
okay.
Um, but Selena, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Gwilda. Happy to be here.
Our guest this hour has been Selina Maitreya, the author of Raise Your Frequency, Transform Your Life, How to Respond with Love to Life's Difficulties. To find out more about Selena, where you can get her book, visit her website, practicalspiritualitywithselena.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But please be sure to join us right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.